What's going on, people? This is Phonetics, and this is the first part of my Mixdowns Made Easy series. Today I'm going to be concentrating on EQ, and it's used to brighten your mixes and help you to find space within the frequency spectrum for each audio stem or part that you've sequenced. On the screen now you will see SoundForge open with two instances of the same track. In an ideal world I probably should use one of my own tracks, but I just mixed this down for the Final Cutt Collective. It's a bootleg of Bruno Mars's Finesse, and it's fantastic, and I enjoyed working with it, and I figured what the hey, good example to start with. The version on the bottom, which is creatively entitled The Original, is the original one. So it is just the stems that I was provided bounced down to one audio file. And what you're hopefully going to hear when I play it back in a minute is, although it sounds brilliant, and I'm not criticising the Final Cutt Collective at all, in places it's a little bit muddy. There are certain elements that get lost and which could kind of leap out of the mix a little bit better if with correct usage of the right tools. The version on top is my pre-master, which is ready to be sent off to the mastering engineer after I've had my way, mixed it down, and used EQ extensively. So let me just give you a quick run through, and hopefully you're going to hear a difference. If you're watching this at low resolution, you're going to want to choose the HD setting on YouTube, so you can better appreciate the audio, and you're probably going to want to do this on studio monitors or speakers or headphones, certainly not a mobile phone. You're not going to appreciate the difference if you're watching on a mobile. So as I said, fantastic. Arguably a little bit flat in places, so here's what I've done with it. So my version, hopefully you will agree, has a bit more weight in the low end, has a little bit more sparkle in the top end, and then each separate stem kind of fits into the frequency spectrum a little bit better, so that you can hear it kind of leaping out. The way I've done this is per my method, which I've spoken about with a couple of other engineers and producers, and they've kind of frowned at me and said that's a bit unusual, which is why I thought I'd share it. You can read all the books in the world and watch different things, but ultimately the best way to learn to do something is by yourself, and this is something I've kind of picked up as I've gone through. In FL Studio, and I've got FL Studio open for this project, it's very easy to kind of show you what I've done. That way I'm comfortable using FL and it works well on my machine. But the principles I'm talking about here apply regardless of what digital audio workstation you were using. So don't be perturbed if you're a Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools user, or Reason for that matter. Whatever you're using, you can draw something from this video and take it across to your sequencer. I have got on my master bus an IXL spectrum analyzer, which is this useful plugin here, and what this does is it maps out where your sounds are peaking across the frequency spectrum, and the frequency spectrum is denoted by these numbers along the bottom here, with of course volume up the side. So if you play something back and you see a large line at 2.5 kilohertz and everything else is very low or considerably lower, your audio is peaking at 2.5 kilohertz. What I do, once I've got all of the stems lined up, is solo each channel and then play back the result, and you will see where each channel is peaking. I then note down the peak frequencies, the notable frequencies, ones that can be boosted, ones that need cutting, just in a notepad document. You could do this by hand on a notepad, you could do it in Word, you could do it whichever way suits you. So as you can see, I've gone through here, I've soloed each channel, and I've noted where the key frequencies are. Now some of these are going to need boosting, some of these are going to need cutting. One of the key principles with EQing is that you should always aim to cut before you boost. The reason for that is if you start boosting excessively, then you'll introduce unusual artifacts, and whereas that can be useful in some contexts and it can fit with certain genres, generally speaking, if you can cut, because it's going to be better on the whole. So what I do, once I have soloed the channels, isolated which frequencies are best for each for each audio stem. Sorry, I lost my trail of thought there. I will open a parametric EQ. Now what I've done in this instance, and you'll see it on the screen here, is I've actually got 3 parametric EQs open on each channel, which arguably could seem a little bit excessive, but once I talk you through this, it's going to make more sense. You can use any parametric EQ for this, preferably one with a number of bands is probably going to work better. If you look at my notepad document, I'm going to attempt to have it open at the same time as the parametric EQs so you can see what I'm talking about here. You will see that these bands that I've set up correlate with the bands at which I've got peak frequencies and frequencies that need boosting and cutting. So I've got these all set to a fairly narrow bandwidth, which enables me to kind of crack on and be a bit more brutal with them. Not too brutal, albeit. What I will aim to do is say, right, okay, my kick peaks at, actually the kick's a bad example, scrap that, we'll choose the Rhodes. My Rhodes have got a peak at 800 Hertz. I'm going to boost that so that they jump out there, but they need cutting between 300 and 400 Hertz, otherwise they're going to clash with the piano and the pad. And then I will go through and I will give the Rhodes a slight boost at 800 Hertz, maybe 3 decibels, and then I will cut this frequency here, so between 300 and 400, so it doesn't clash there. And if the Rhodes also plays at the same time as the vocal, which it does in this instance, I might create a slight dip at 1.6 kilohertz. In essence, what I do is go through, and if I can open up the parametric EQs on each channel, you will see what I've done is I've boosted and then cut quite a few other channels. So here's the piano, and I've cut it a little bit, 5 kilohertz, 6.3 kilohertz. I boosted it at 400 because that was the value that I isolated would need boosting, and then I've taken some of the low end out. That actually, if you go through and do that on every channel, will help to bring through certain elements. The other part to this, which is, not everybody does this, I do it extensively, is rolling off frequencies. So I will cut a lot of different audio stems. I will cut everything out below 100, maybe 200 Hertz, depending on how much energy it needs, to create more space for the bass. And that's especially important in a track like this, where there's a heavy sort of sub content. So here, if I go through these channels, you'll see that piano's cut at 100 Hertz, as is the 80 stab. In fact, I've actually got a sort of preset set up on one of the parametric EQs which really kills anything below 100 Hertz. You can use high pass filters, but I prefer not to do those because I find this gives me a little bit more of a degree of control, and I can be more specific the frequencies I'm cutting from. I've also done this thing, and this is something that I started doing years ago in Fruity because I found it just gave my mixdowns a little bit more sparkle, and that's to roll off the high frequencies, but I set the bandwidth as high as the high shelf as high as it will go, and that additionally gives a little peak at about 10 kilohertz. I'll also give a slight boost on most channels depending on what the instrument is, at about 12 kilohertz, and I'm talking a very subtle boost, and that gives things a little bit more sparkle. If I'm aware I've just chatted for about 10 minutes without actually kind of giving you any example of what I've done to work with. So let's mute. Let's use the 80 stab as an example of what I've done here because I've been so brutal with it. I'll just pull this all off as well, so you're hearing the original stem and then the final version. So here, the yellow part here is the 80 stab. I'm going to play it back for you, solo, so you hear that with the IXL spectrum analyzer running. Okay. And that's without any of my EQing on it. Here's with my EQing. If you're looking at the spectrum analyzer, you'll see there's nothing at all left below 100 Hertz. And then these frequencies here have got a slight peak, more of a peak to them, so that when you play it all together, it cuts through a little better. And hopefully, if you follow that advice in your mixdowns, and I appreciate that's a lot to take on board, hopefully you will be able to recreate the difference between a flat sounding mixdown and one with a lot of clarity and a bit more impact. I'm going to sign off there and revisit this on another day to talk about other fundamentals of mixing. Hope that helps.